we've seen now a tremendous amount of unhappiness on the Dutch farmer front. So the judicial authorities in Holland accused the Netherlands government of failing to live up to its international obligations on the pollution amelioration front and required immediate action to be taken with regards to nitrogen pollution, which admittedly can be a problem. Now, the plan that the Netherlands imposed by compulsion will result in the destruction of a substantial proportion of the Netherlands farming infrastructure. And the people who are promoting this say, well, we think the sector can be resilient enough to manage this. But the farmers know perfectly well that many of them are going to be forced out of business, as the politicians themselves have not only admitted, but are aiming for. And now there is this approximately 30% reduction in the Dutch herd and the associated farms. And the politicians who are pushing this seem to think that the whole agricultural sector in the Netherlands, which is the world's second biggest exporter of agricultural products, that the infrastructure there will be able to tolerate this forced and compelled reduction in supply and consequent increases in costs. But my sense is the whole agricultural section will stagger and fall, especially under the weight of these supply chain problems. I mean, I can't see how you can take a whole industry that runs on about a 3 to 5% margin, force a 30% reduction in its inputs over an 8-year period, and expect the whole system to survive. Now,
they don't expect it to survive. They don't expect it to survive.
Okay, we'll get into that. Now, just to add a little twist to that. Now, the Dutch farmers are out protesting. There's 40,000 of them with their big tractors, and they don't do that lightly because those tractors are expensive and they're very busy. And right in the bloody midst of this, our prime minister did exactly the same thing. He unilaterally announced a mandatory 30% reduction in nitrogen output, and on the farmer side, and he wasn't even willing to tie that to units of nitrogen used per unit of food produced, because apparently he doesn't give a damn whether we produce food effectively, and then that means that poor people will go hungry. So what do you make of this? Again, we said, this isn't even good environmental policy. It's not going to work. And I don't know what's going to happen in Sri Lanka, but my suspicions are the people are going to be cutting down the forests and eating the animals, because what the hell else are they going to do?
Exactly. You're absolutely correct. I don't believe that they expect the survival of the system. And the policies are created largely because they don't believe that system is worth keeping. And they've said it to the farmers in the Netherlands. They've said that to them. In some places, the nitrogen reduction content is up to 90% if it's near conservation in the Netherlands, up to 90%. And remember, these farmers, including our farmers, they have been approached about this net zero before. This is not the first time. And they were told, if you invest in innovative technologies, that would bring down your carbon footprint, and therefore you would get some credits for that. And so many of those farmers in the Netherlands, they spent millions of dollars investing in innovative technology. And then after that, the government said, what? That's not good enough. Then they brought in the nitrogen requirements. So then they imposed the nitrogen requirements upon an already fragile industry. And then the Dutch farmers said, well, we will not be able, exactly like in Sri Lanka, to make the yields that it would be worth financially us continuing this industry. And what did the government say? Well, if your farms can't sustain itself, they're not sustainable. We'll buy them, or a corporation will buy them from you, but we cannot continue to invest in an unsustainable business. And when the Dutch farmers come out and say, well, we are one of the largest exporters of cash crops, certain cash crops, what does the government say? Oh, no, you're not. You import a lot of the things that you need to produce that. And so when you minus that from the equation, you're actually negligible in the world scheme of the food supply chain. So they have an answer for everything. And not only that, when the Dutch farmers said, okay, let's look at if this is really about the environment, and the Canadian farmers are saying the same thing. Let's look at our contribution and the contribution that we make to carbon sequestration. When we plant crops, carbon is sequestered in the soil. And so do we get, in Canada, the question's asked, do we get a reduction from our carbon tax that we're paying to dry the crops? Can we get a reduction on that carbon tax? And the answer is no. In the Netherlands, what was the answer? The government basically said, well, no, you don't get to do the calculations. We're the ones who set the calculations. So the metrics, they don't even want to negotiate on the metrics, which tells you how dictatorial this whole process is, when you cannot even have people who have tended to the land for generations, who are probably some of the most experienced farmers in the world, where you say their input is not valid. It tells you that there is an agenda beyond just protecting the environment. Because if it were just protecting the environment, you would want all of these viable inputs, and you would want to say, okay, this practice, if it can be done in a sustainable manner, let's do it. No, you impose a restriction that you know will kill the industry.